Hello and welcome to Lecture 6 in the Managing the Customer Experience in Healthcare and Hospitality Services class. The topic of today's lecture is Customer or Patient Relationship Management. So today's lecture will first conclude with those last three stages of experience: design, creation, reflection, and implementation stages. So we'll cover a bit about what the creation of concept for improvement of experience is and how this concept can be prototyped. And then we will define customer relationship management. We'll talk about how that relates to the experience management and entire creation of the experience, and try to kind of convey this to the application in the healthcare industry. So we will reflect on some of the customer relationship management strategies and see which software is used to manage patient relations in healthcare. Let us recall our plan of action for experience design from Lecture 4. So remember, in Lecture 4 and Lecture 5, we predominantly focused on this exploration stage, which was about identifying the challenges and outcomes in the current experience that patients have, different methods and diagnostic tools to use the data, and how to interpret those insights and try to visualize them in the form of customer journey maps or stakeholder maps. And patient personas as kind of graphic tools. So now we're going to focus on this creation, reflection, and implementation stage. The most kind of the major aspect of this lecture is going to be about the reflection stage and why is that important. So in the creation stage, you're kind of trying to draw your insights from the data and from the suggestions that are based on the data to propose the actions and interventions, meaning different activities that should be done in order to improve patient experience in each of the touch points, or at least like in those key touch points that reflects your moments of truth, those 4 important moments of truth. So when you come up with the initiatives, you should design this like overall concept of how the experience should be improved, and think about how to test those initiatives. So basically, to test those initiatives, you would not go ahead and like straight away implement them. You would first create something like a prototype of that service, and then test a prototype, see what should be revised, and then just later on implement those concepts for service improvement and for experience improvement in your organization. So we will discuss what are some of the prototyping strategies in the next few slides. So to prepare for any interventions in the improvement of experience, you should come up with a concept of the service and a more specific set of actions that should define how and in what way is going to be improved and what kind of resources are needed. So the proposed action should be based on your insights from the data that you gathered, and should be related to the areas where you identify the major pain points in the experience, so in that patient journey. Those actions should be attainable and work with your budget and human assets. So for instance, if you think about the environmental services, and if your interviews with patients or other diagnostic tools reveal that there are issues in the cleanliness of the hospital, you should think about what are, for instance, some of the major issues. Let's say that you're running in a hospital where the environmental services department is actually outsourced to a cleaning and management company, and patients are not really happy with the level of cleanliness, so that impacts their overall experience. So you should think about the course of action that should be taken to improve that. If the course of action is to replace the management company, it's fine, we can go and replace them, but this transition has to be like very smooth. Or maybe you want to go back to having your environmental services department in-house. So if it's done in-house, at the same time you need to provide yourself enough time to gather a team of people that will be trained in an adequate way, and think about the tools that can help them make the transition between the management company that is running your the outsourced environmental services company and your in-house department. So again, like think about if the hospital is old but is not unclean. Maybe your service improvement can be related to communicating and educating patients that the cleanliness is actually okay in the hospital. It's just that the hospital is generally old. So something that is old does not necessarily need to be unclean. So to kind of a general framework to propose these actions consist of several steps, and these are first to form the central experience team. So you should combine the leaders in different departments who can give a different outlook and perspective on the common issues that are identified. So people that can be a part of that team could be, for instance, the chief nurse, the director of environmental services, or the head of maintenance, the director of F&B. So people that can really contribute to, in their knowledge and experience and communication with the team, to the overall development of the course of actions. Next, you should assign the roles and responsibilities to frontline staff. So engage them in delivering the services at a higher level that can improve patient experience. So although frontline staff, the one who interact with patients, are usually the first key point and the first touch point in patient experience, do not neglect the support of the back office staff. So they should be also familiarized with the overall changes. Next, you should think about establishing different performance metrics at units that are facing the patients directly, and to be able to kind of follow and see if the improvements are made. So, for instance, you can try to capture the average time that is being spent with physician per patient, or the average time the nurse dedicates to patients. If we're thinking about environmental services, for instance, some of the metrics can be the bed turnaround time. So, you can think about let's say the linen that is used per patient day. So some of those metrics that can really help you and see if the overall, again, like efficiency in delivering environmental services being improved. So these metrics can help you identify where the discrepancy lies and if there is any weaknesses that should be still accommodated in your proposed actions. And finally, you should define the training needs for your employees around this experience management. And one of the major issues with proposing the course of actions that should be taken is that there can be a lack of priority and inadequate realism in terms of how easily attainable some of those actions are. Some of the actions can require really multiple resources, either in terms of the staff that is necessary to make the change, or simply like monetary costs. So they really require a significant amount of funds to create the changes. So to be able to coordinate what should be done in the ideal world to improve patient experience and what can be done, you can employ some of the methods with the experience team. So one of these methods is called card sorts. So card sorts revolves around categorization of different actions, because a lot of the actions that different team members come up with can be grouped together. So the goal is that you should create a definite number of cards that can be labeled with a phrase that signifies different aspects of the health experience that should be improved, and then really ask like your people in the experience team, what would they do to kind of make those actions come true, and they should be try to group them around the same goal. So for instance, if the overall course of action is improving the cleanliness, the overall goal is improving cleanliness, then one course of actions can be hire more EVS technicians or make better trainings. So these can be different actions that can be grouped around the same goal. So you should let your experience team group the cards in a way that makes the most sense to them, that unifies the actions for improvement. So one of the benefits is that it really helps you prioritize and sort the actions based on the importance, but you can also break down like larger kind of objectives into smaller components. So you can see how some of the components and improvements in different departments in your healthcare organization can align to one overall objective. To be completely sure that the proposed course of actions or your interventions are really going to make impact on patient experience, you should first think about prototyping those services. So prototyping services really allows you to simulate what the service experience will be like and to try to understand the impact of this final intervention before it is implemented. So prototype should be essentially the expression of the experience design intention. It establishes more of a tangible, or like I like to call it, hands-on service offer that can really show you how that change is going to impact the overall experience. With a prototype, your team can really get a feel for the service. So it is pretty straightforward for products. It is a bit more complicated for services. It requires a bit more creativity. So if you think about prototypes or products, every time somebody's trying to create like a new patent or completely new product, they actually develop like different versions of those patents first. I don't know if you've seen the movie Joy, about Joy Mangano, who designed the Miracle Mop. If you've seen it, you know that she's been working on a lot of prototypes of her Miracle Mop before she was able to create the final version. So just posted here a few pictures to kind of connect this. With services, you can do different kinds of prototyping, something that can be very primitive, primitive technology, and this is frequently called rapid prototyping. So this rapid prototyping is very messy, incomplete, and unfinished, but it encourages the creativity. It means using very simple resources, something like interaction between different team members, or role-playing, or kind of cardboard cutouts to think about how the services can be changed for better. So for instance, if you think that your employees need better training, before you actually go and develop the training, you can think about the creative ways to train them. So you can come up with a sketch of how the training videos should look like, maybe just like sketch it like a comic book on paper or on cardboard, or you can try to write down some of the role-playing initiatives and try to assign people to different roles and see how their interactions will develop into successful training. So for instance, if you remember like our past assignment, I was asking for you to start a conversation between a physician and a patient. So this is something that can be done in the prototyping stage, which means that you can ask people to envision how the ideal conversation between a patient and a physician should look like. If services and service changes are a bit more complex and require technology change, you should think about if there is any existing technology that is affordable in the market, and if that technology can be upgraded. So these can be, you can create your prototypes for technological changes based on the existing technology. So for instance, I will kind of cover the different details of prototyping, such as role-playing prototypes, low-fidelity prototypes, and high-fidelity prototypes in the next few slides. But a good kind of starting point is to really think about multiple creative ways to create prototypes and how they should be designed, so you can come up with that ideal solution. One of the strategies for experience prototyping is called scenario-based development or role-playing prototypes. So these prototypes represent kind of a mock-up scripts of how the services should be delivered that are being played out by the members of your team. So each member is given a specific role as either healthcare staff or a patient or some of the other supporting people that are being actors in that service encounter, and is roughly told what they should do and how they should contribute to the overall improvement of experience. Now it is really up to them to come up with natural interactions with other actors that are involved in this role playing, and learn from this interactive process. So to start with role playing, you should give your team an overall concept of how the services should be improved, and let them have around 30 minutes to chat and see how they're going to play this scenario out. You can also use costumes and props to bring this role-playing more to life, and to make the prototyping a bit more realistic, because it can give people a lot more creativity and make them feel that this is really playing out as the actual scenario. So for instance, one of the experience design companies was doing consulting services with a healthcare organization. This experience design company is called IDEO. So they were trying to help the medical staff and patients to simulate what are the different interdependent tasks from operating room staff. So they gathered each member of the healthcare team that is involved in the operating room procedures, and they assigned them the roles of doctors, nurses, anesthesiologists, or patients, and then they were kind of assuming those specific roles and behaved in the situation according to the roles that were assumed. So this way, each team member could better imagine the specific situation and trigger the empathy and try to empathize with the actual patient and discover what course of action should be done to improve the service. So it doesn't mean that the role that is being assigned to physician is going to be the physician every time, but you may actually ask the physicians to be placed in the roles of other staff or to be placed in the roles of patients. So this would actually help them have a better course of action, how to improve the services. When your proposed interventions for experience improvement go beyond training employees in interpersonal communication or making them understand what each staff member does to contribute to patient experience, you should refer to other types of prototyping strategies. So some of those prototyping strategies can be really useful when you want to make radical change in the equipment that is used for patient treatment or for the job that the employees do or for introducing a new piece of technology. So before you go and spend the money on very expensive technology solutions, you should first develop a very cheap and affordable prototypes to test how those solutions are going to make impact and how your employees would get used to the solutions. So to do that, you can refer to low fidelity prototypes. Prototype fidelity generally refers to the look and feel of the final product and service. It means that you would not train your employees straight away on this new software, but you can develop something like a mock-up of a software they can use, for instance, to input patient data. If we're talking about let's say like the front office assistants that are checking in your patients. So for instance, if you want to enable your employees to have an app to be able to check in patients through an app and get access to a system, then you can think about how this app can look like for you and use very simple and cheap materials such as cardboards or paper and different sketches to show what will be the components of that app. So you can see a video how that prototyping in reality looks like. But the kind of basic premise is that you would show a moderate level of interactivity, meaning that you can create different options and buttons and see really how the software can reply to the input from the employee and just showcase how this entire process can be streamlined. Some of the pros of this type of prototyping is that it is extremely low cost and quick, and it shows the effort that the entire team can contribute in designing this new solution. And it can also clarify what can be some of the downsides and what can be some of the issues that people can experience before you go and invest into this very expensive technological solution. There can be also a bit unclear to your team members what is supposed to work in a certain way and what is not, because it requires a lot of imagination from their side to envision the final product. And then there is some level of interactivity, but not really a lot. If you want to test a solution with higher level of interactivity, then you should go ahead and implement more high fidelity prototypes. High fidelity prototypes should appear and function as similar as possible to the actual experience improvement intervention that will be put in place. So for instance, if your intervention should be replacing the current employee scheduling software and the application, then the low fidelity prototype was coming up with a cardboard cutout of how that application should look like and what kind of function it should perform, while the high fidelity prototype should represent the actual application in trial on a limited number of employees. So it should be the actual physical application in people's phone and the application in the computers. So this prototype is more interactive, more detailed and realistic, but at the same time it is more expensive. And it should provide a very clear guideline of whether this can really bring improvement to experiences or not. Other than those types of app-based high-fidelity prototypes, A lot of the time the prototypes in the healthcare industry are physical or virtual reality prototypes that are also on the expensive side. So for instance, when medical students and staff are being trained to perform medical procedures on patients, they do not really go ahead and test it out on patients, on like live patients. They can use high fidelity hospital mannequins that are actually mannequins with certain kind of robotic features, and they can impersonate the real patient, so they can simulate what the patient condition is going to be like. So those high-fidelity hospital mannequins are props that have been extensively used, and they can be very expensive and go for like up to like $60,000 per like one mannequin. Some of them I've heard like are even more expensive, and the cost for like one mannequin would be like around like $500,000. But to kind of replace those very expensive developments of the mannequins, a lot of the times the staff is using virtual reality training. So for instance, I gave you here an explanation of how a virtual reality training for trauma department can look like, and it can really help different team members understand how to make decisions in those traumatic and very difficult contexts for patients in the department. In the effort to improve the overall experiences, a lot of the interventions that are proposed can fall in the domain of managing patient relationships. Relationship management is not a novel thing. It is something that has existed in other services ever since the 1970s, although it has been implemented in healthcare with limited success back in the 1990s. While experience management is really about anticipating what patient experiences will be like, so from the patient side, relationship management comes from the side of the organization, and it really reflects how that organization collects information about patients and their interactions to be able to follow up with them in a better way and to attain and retain more customers. So customer relationship management interventions can be done in the form of introducing a customer relationship management software into the organization, which can be prototype based on the needs of a healthcare provider. So basically, in the process of experience management, you can identify what are the problems with maintaining good relationships with patients throughout their journey, and think about how this customer relationship management software can be introduced in your organization to improve the maintenance of those relationships. It is essentially kind of a sidekick to the overall experience management. So it doesn't mean that you should only focus on experience management and not on relationships. You should focus on both in your organization. So what is customer relationship management? It is any application or initiative designed to help an organization optimize interactions with its customers, suppliers, or any other actors in the system. So it should be a technological solution and more of a management solution that unifies different outlets and channels how customers interact with your organization. So it can be something that unifies the call center, the appointment schedule, their records, the payment system, and it is a very comprehensive solution that basically connects people, processes in the organization, and the technology. You can also define customer relationship management as any business initiative to recognize, acquire, and retain customers. By enabling organizations to manage and coordinate those interactions across the multiple touch points, this CRM initiative can help companies maximize the value of every interaction, both for the customer and for the company, which is reflected in their return on investment. For those of you that work in hospitality industry at the moment, think about what are customer relationship management initiatives that are being done by your companies. And you will see that most of them revolve around several aspects. The first one is technology solutions for database management. So it is about providing adequate software that can track the customers, their behaviors, their interactions with the company, and collect information about them, so the marketing team can respond in an adequate way to customers' requests, or can in an adequate way target your customers. You can also have separate databases for suppliers or other potential clients. The second major aspect of CRM is one-to-one customer communications. So when you think about the customer support departments or any other departments that are kind of monitoring social media, monitoring reviews, replying to those reviews, or replying to complaints and special requests, providing recovery and assistance, those can really fall in the scope of CRM initiatives. And kind of the third major component is managing the loyalty programs or reward programs. Now, what CRM is using to do that is a specific software that is designed to support the experience management process in several ways. The first one is by recording the interactions with customers. So by recording interactions with customers, you can create a database of customer preferences that can help your design teams understand better what the experiences can be like and understand different touch points that your customers go through with your organization. The second one is recording the potential sales opportunities. So while in the hospital the sales opportunities are a bit more limited, in other businesses, by knowing what your customer preferences are, you can always think about targeting them with special offers that will convert into the sales and revenue for your company. And the third activity is providing automated pipelines for moving customers through the sales process. In healthcare organizations, customer relationship management or patient relationship management typically refers to the solutions and systems that are put in place to engage patients beyond their traditional appointments with the physicians, and also to facilitate some back-of-house processes that enable good patient experiences. So a lot of the times, PRM technology solutions should integrate different processes that take place in departments across the healthcare organization. So for instance, you can use this solution to track patient information that goes beyond what is in their electronic health records. So this way you can segment patients based on their demographics or some of the other supporting information. You can also integrate PRM with the billing system, accounting system, or appointment planner. So for instance, if it's integrated with the appointment planner, then you can send automatic reminder messages to patients about their upcoming appointments. Or you can send follow-up messages and refer to like all follow-up communication with the medical staff through that system. So for instance, you can also set up an automated information about suggestions how they can improve their lifestyle to facilitate the medical treatment that they're receiving. PRM can also be integrated with the marketing platform, so any kind of promotional materials for support groups or activities and initiatives done by the healthcare organization can be sent through that system. Or for instance, if you want to make your service a bit more personalized, you can even send birthday cards by utilizing the PRM. The good thing about the PRM is that it must be compliant with the HIPAA. So it means that all information that is being stored about patients should be secured, highly secured, and safe from potential data breaches. If you're interested in learning more about patient relationship management, you can check out this free webinar online. So I've provided here the link for you. All you need to do is click on the link and provide your email address to access the webinar, and then you can listen to the entire presentation, and you can also receive slides in your inbox. So next week we will have a guest speaker who will talk a bit more about the Office of Patient Experience. She's a senior manager in the office, and we hope that you will enjoy her presentation. So I hope that you enjoyed today's lecture, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Managing patient relationships is not only about the technology solutions, but it is also about the human factor that goes beyond that technology. So many hospitals nowadays have a person in charge of the Office of Patient Experience, and the name for this role can be relatively different depending on the organization. So you can find the role to be named as Chief Experience Officer, Director of Patient Experience, or Patient Services Director, probably some other names that I haven't listed here. However, the scope of this role should be relatively consistent. This person should identify key areas that need improvement in the relationships with patients, and should also help to manage the patient's path throughout the healthcare organization, so manage their customer journey essentially. This should be the person that can help identify what are the potential barriers for this healthcare organizations to maintain a long-lasting relationships with patients, and it should also identify how the healthcare organization can modify the aspects of overall patient experience to improve the patient's overall well-being. So Chief Experience Officer works with a group of staff that can be existing employees that already serve in other roles in the healthcare organization, or they can be hired separately for this specific office. So they should coordinate the efforts with the receptionists, with call center operators, with nursing assistants, with EVS technicians, and all other employees that come into direct contact with patients. This person can also come from any hospital department, but it should be a person that has a relatively thorough understanding about the importance of clinical and non-clinical procedures that are being performed in the hospital. So, hello and welcome to Lecture 7 of Managing the Customer Experience in Healthcare and Hospitality Services class. The topic of today's lecture is Experience Management Strategies. Initially, we were supposed to have a guest speaker, Deborah Petruselli from Meridian Health Hackensack, who is the Senior Manager of Office of Patient Experience, to share her information about what her office does and what is the scope of responsibilities, how they manage patient experience, and what kind of strategies they use in that process. However, due to unforeseen circumstances, Deborah had to cancel her lecture. So instead, I decided to provide you here with key information about the Office of Patient Experience, and I'm hoping to find another guest speaker for that same topic for the end of the semester. So by the end of the semester, hopefully we will get the updated recordings from another officer of patient experience at another hospital. So in today's lecture, there won't be voiceovers on the slides, but instead you can rely on the notes that are available in the notes section in your PowerPoint. In the next week, hopefully, we will have a guest lecture from one of the speakers who is a Chief Experience Officer in their own organization.